NTA International News.
President Buhari delivers Nigeria's statement at Climate Change Conference, restates his administration's commitment to mitigate the effect of climate change. Nigeria and Qatar to sign bilateral air service agreement. Nigeria joins the world to mark Geographic Information System Day. Plus, Ministry of Information and Culture takes steps to retrieve Nigeria's stolen artifacts as the Tourism Corporation braces up to take advantage of foreign exchange potentials of the tourism sector. Thanks for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Omini Udan. President Muhammadu Buhari delivered the country's statement at the high-level meeting of COP22 in Marrakesh, Morocco, stating the commitment of his administration towards making Nigeria one of the world's best examples of how emission reduction can be of tremendous benefit to the environment and the economy. The president said already far-reaching changes are being made to the nation's economic sectors towards ensuring that environmental sustainability, inclusive growth, and placed at the core of the change agenda. State House correspondent Adam Musambo has details.
Coming 1 year after the Paris climate deal and days since its entry into force, COP22, as this Marrakesh conference is called, is the crucial next step for governments to reinforce responsible collaboration as well as achieve a collective shift towards a new sustainable development model.
I call on developed countries to honor their commitment to mobilize climate finance, $100 billion by 2020 to help developing countries to mitigate and adapt to climate vulnerability.
At the very center of our work lies the vital need to make climate action a cornerstone to the transformation to truly sustainable development.
What is at stake is the very existence of man. It is therefore our joint duty to work hand in hand to protect humanity.
In his statement, President Muhammadu Buhari expressed optimism that the conference will mark another milestone in the collective aspiration of the international community towards addressing the menace of climate change. He stated Nigeria's ambitious but achievable commitment to what he called green growth, in line with the platform of change on which his administration was elected.
This commitment comes from the recognition of the grave social, economic, and environmental threats that climate change poses to humanity. We believe that pursuing these programs will not only reduce emissions and improve climate resilience, but also stimulate growth and economic opportunities in the private sector. Our goal is to make Nigeria one of the world's best examples of how reducing emissions can benefit the environment and the economy.
The president used the forum to alert the international community that in Nigeria, the larger dimension of the challenge posed by climate change goes beyond emission rights to that of survival, warning that if nothing is done, the human and financial cost will be colossal.
The Lake Chad Basin, for example, has shrunk to a mere 10% of its original size, and this has seriously affected the livelihood of over 5 million people and contributed in the growth of insecurity in the region, including the emergence of Boko Haram as a terrorist group. Hence the urgent need to resuscitate Lake Chad.
With Nigeria's instrument of ratification for the new global agenda on climate change already submitted, President Muhammadu Buhari called on world leaders to recommit themselves to the goals of the Paris Agreement for the benefit of this and future generations. For sure, the earlier threat by the United States President-elect Donald Trump to rip up the agreement on climate change is generating concerns among participants. But President François Hollande of France has formally allayed their fears, saying no one country can abolish the Paris deal, which he described as irreversible in law. He, however, promised to spearhead discussions with the Trump administration towards ensuring that the United States' commitment to climate change remains unwavering. From Marrakesh, Morocco, Adam Musambo, NTA News.
The Federal Executive Council has approved the signing of the bilateral air service agreement between Nigeria and Qatar. The Council also approved an agreement on avoidance of double taxation between Nigeria and Singapore. Here is State House correspondent Jide Onifade with the details.
Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, first hinted the press on the decisions of the Federal Executive Council, which he said were taken to strengthen the relations among the three countries. Thereafter, the Minister of Finance and that of Aviation explained details of the agreements.
It will encourage more foreign direct investment into Nigeria, allow investors to know what their tax obligations will be, and ensures a stable tax regime for each country. Now, the basis on which we chose or we decided to enter into this agreement with Singapore is that Singapore is actually a major trading partner of Nigeria. They buy oil from us. Petroleum export to Singapore for the last 5 years is about $264 billion, and then we import around $311 billion worth of goods from them. Sorry, that's Naira, not dollars. I apologize. Naira, I apologize. 264 billion versus imports of 311 billion.
Transportation, as it regards air transportation and the signing of bilateral air service agreement between the state of Qatar and then Singapore and Nigeria was approved by Council. And our choice was Singapore. Of course, Singapore is becoming the most efficient and the biggest hub around the far eastern part of our globe. And we thought that in our efforts to also create a hub within Nigeria, at the center of Africa, we would leverage on the opportunity to create air services between the two countries.
The meeting was chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. In the State House, Jide Onifade, NTA News.
Senate Committee on Customs Service and Tariff suspends payment of Nigeria's Customs Service Kana contract for information pending outcome of its investigation. Committee's chairman, Hope Uzodinma, at an interactive session says Minister of Finance is invited to clarify some financial issues surrounding the contract. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
The committee's interaction brought together representatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Federal Ministry of Finance and that of Trade and Investment, as well as the Nigeria Customs Service. Other representatives were from Budget Office and Sanders Organization of Nigeria. They are all part of the Technical Committee on Pre-Shipment Inspection, which the senators say violated Nigeria's Pre-Shipment Inspection of Imports Act in the award and management of the contract.
All importers pay 1% ad valorem of the FOB value of all imports assessed by the inspection agents into the comprehensive import supervision pool account.
Taking over responsibility of inspection agents by customs officers against the provision of the Act and mismanagement of 1% levy to support trade facilitation, which include payment to shipment agents, were other topical issues that need clarification according to the senators. Meanwhile, Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream oversighted the Ministry of Petroleum Resources for breakdown of the 2016 budget expenditure. In the same vein, Chairman Senate Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs, Tijani Kaura, says the committee will investigate zero allocation for capital expenditure in the 2016 budget of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. In Abuja, Abdullahi Aminu, NTA News.
The Executive Secretary, Pension Transitional Arrangements Directorate, Sharon Ikiazo, says over 4,000 pensioners who were unjustly removed from the payroll will be re-enlisted immediately. This was during an oversight visit by members House of Representatives Committee on Pensions. Adebola Brooklyn Sunday reports.
All the outstanding benefits and arrears to these 4,137 pensioners, payment will commence hopefully by next week.
Mrs. Ikazo further stated that arrangements are in place for additional payments of 33% arrears to the police pensioners. The committee commended PTAD for giving required attention to complaints from pensioners. The verification center where next of kins are being documented was also inspected by the committee.
Despite the fact that the numbers of complaints are many, but the agency has started gradually handling the issues, and by God's grace, with working together with the committee, definitely will reach the promised land.
Well, the ones we have computed, we intend to pay before the end of the financial year. Those that don't have complete documentation will have to come back with the complete documentation because we must get the right information to put it into our database. The 33% arrears, we're planning on paying the police to make up for 1 year before the end of the financial year as well.
It resolved in collaboration with PTAD to jointly visit all the verification centers in the Northeast before the end of the year. Adebola, Brooksland Sunday, NTA News.
The Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs is deploying effective conflict resolution techniques to set the scene for peaceful negotiation for the underlying issues in the Niger Delta region. The Minister of State Niger Delta, Professor Claudius Daramola, at a stakeholders consultative forum at Odeaye, Ikitipupa, Ondo State, reiterated quality of life of the people of Niger Delta region. But as he said, there must be a halt to destruction of national assets. Joseph Orok reports.
The stakeholders forum was flagged off with free medical tests on malaria, diabetes and other forms of disease for the people of Okitipupa community of Ondo State.
I have a health problem and I'm very happy this situation that I'm in this moment.
The forum on the theme Securing National Assets and Peace for Sustainable Development's grassroots approach is in furtherance of President Muhammadu Buhari's dialogue with elders of the Niger Delta region to promote peace. Participants, mostly the rural populace, were instructed on non-violence approach to community conflicts as panacea for development.
We have people who are very restless, youths who are very restless, damaging the pipeline, breaking this and breaking that, because they are not informed. This program is mainly to sensitize our people.
So through what we have done so far, I believe the vices we are having in some parts of the Niger Delta region, especially in this community, will be drastically reduced.
The forum is a bottom-up approach of the ministry to find out the needs of the people. Joseph Orok, NTA News.
Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says his ministry will partner with Artifacts Rescuers Association of Nigeria to retrieve the country's stolen assets in a bid to preserve its cultural heritage and boost tourism. The minister was speaking when he opened talks with members of the association in Abuja. Anthony Forson reports.
The Information and Culture Minister, while expressing satisfaction with the association, maintained that he is optimistic that the association is in a position to ensure that the nation's stolen artifacts are retrieved.
I think you deserve nothing but encouragement and praise for your nationalism and patriotism.
The minister, however, assured that the challenges facing the association will be promptly looked into.
We are ready to cooperate with you. We are ready to work with you on terms that will be mutually acceptable to all the parties.
President of the association, George Agbo, who held the minister's commitment to repositioning the sector in Nigeria, said its primary responsibility is to rescue the nation's stolen artifacts for proper keeps and preservation.
We have been able to rescue quite a number of these objects for the country. As at the last count, over 5,000, in one hall was done, and we were duly compensated.
Present at the meeting were chief executives of parastatals under culture and tourism. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
More than $4 billion is expected to be realized in Nigeria's domestic tourism market if well developed. Director General, Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, NTDC, Sally Mbanefo, made this known while inaugurating members of the Project Tourism Committee in Abuja. Correspondent Oyinaya Kaluka reports.
Recent data shows that current global tourism contributions to GDP is more than 10%, accounting for about 8.7% of global employment. According to the Director General NTDC Salim Banefo, many developing countries have increased their participation in the global economy through tourism, hence the need for Nigeria to key into it.
You go to countries like Gambia. Gambia is giving about 17.7% as its tourism contribution to its GDP. We must not underestimate the importance of domestic tourism, local tourism.
The Project Tourism, a public-private partnership initiative, will promote growth and development of domestic tourism in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, there's so much we have here that are untapped.
Statistics from the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation show that in 2014, about 4.8 million tourists visited Nigeria. In 2015, this increased to 6.4 million tourists. The project is to identify and establish one hub of cultural tourism village across the Federation, organize global road show, host family scheme and Grand Tourism Award. In Abuja, Oyinaya Kalu Oka, NTA News.
You are watching NTA International News. Up ahead on the news, former Abia State Governor Ojuza Kalu defects to All Progressives Congress. Join us in a moment.
Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so change begins from within. Look at you, oh get change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with
NTA International News. Africa as it is.
Thanks for staying on with NTA International News. Effective management of the nation's lands and waterways for sustainable development comes to the fore yet again as Nigeria joins the rest of the world to celebrate this year's Geographic Information System Day. Correspondent Kenneth Imabudike was at a conference held at the National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDA, Abuja, to mark the day.
Discovering the world through Geographic Information System, GIS, is the theme of the conference organized by the Geo-Information Society of Nigeria, GIOSN, to mark this year's Geographic Information System Day, midweek. Participants who are drawn from various sectors brainstormed on the role of Geographic Information System in national development and economic recovery.
Looking at the NDA's position to facilitate national development across thematic levels, it is obvious that the information that should support them are either inadequate, non-existent, or in formats that can hardly trickle down into the decision-making process.
Other speakers at the conference remarked that a functional geographic information system can sufficiently cushion the effects of security challenges and economic recession facing the nation at the moment.
If you have the appropriate population in a place, it will help the police to appropriate the effective number that we're able to counter with crime in those areas.
Participants at this conference unanimously agree that Nigeria stands to gain a lot by imbibing the core values and potentials of a vibrant geographic information system, but then again, concerted efforts must be made by relevant authorities and other partners to complement the role of Geo-Information Society of Nigeria, GIOSN, in its bid to bring the nation at par with the rest of the world in this regard. From the National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDA, Abuja, Kenan Imabodike, NTA News.
Moving on to politics, the former governor of Abia State, Abuja Kalu, has defected to the All Progressives Congress. Abuja Kalu, who used to be a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, said his defection was to join the Progressives in making Nigeria a better place for all. Receiving the former governor into the fold of the Progressives, the national chairman of APC, Chief John Odigio-Yegun, said the party would continue to work to reposition Nigeria for the good of the people. Chief Odigio-Yegun described the defection of Abuja Kalu as a right step in the right direction. And now for business news. In the financial sector, let's join Edeago.
Welcome to Business News. The capital importation data supplied by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the National Bureau of Statistics showed that foreign inflows into Nigerian equities in the third quarter of 2016 fell by 28%, which indicates a 9-year low. Inflows into equities were $201.12 million in third quarter, compared with previous highs of $4.930 billion in first quarter of 2013 and $3.875 billion in second quarter of 2015. This fall is due to investors seeking safety in less risky and high-yielding fixed income securities. Meanwhile, major equities markets moved higher on both sides of the Atlantic on Wednesday, and Nigerian equities market closed on a negative note as all-share index depreciated by 0.79% to close at 25,653.14 basis points. Here are the closing figures. That's it on Business News. The news continues shortly. I am Ede Awo.
Fatima Aliu is now standing by with happenings around the globe.
Kenya's government has extended by 6-month deadline to close the Dadaab, world's largest refugee camp, home to more than 300,000 Somalis. Though this is not the first time Kenya has backed down from a decision to close the camp, but said the suspension is to allow more time for consultation and funding. Rights groups at Ilia expressed alarm over the initial deadline of November ending. Australia, Canada and US warships are helping with evacuation and supply of aid to New Zealand after a series of tremors which claimed 2 lives on Monday. About 600 people were evacuated on Wednesday by air and sea as workers also established emergency road to access the town, which has been cut off by landslides. In another development, U.S. President Barack Obama has admitted he and Donald Trump could not be more different, but said American democracy was bigger than any one person. Mr. Obama, in Athens on his final World Tour, vowed that his team will do everything possible to support the smoothest transition. Fatima Aliu, NTA News.
And on sports, Nigeria's under-20 women team, Falconets, secured first win at FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup in Papua Guinea as 3 cities intensify bids for 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Ayodeji Makinde has details on sports updates.
Nigeria's Falconets produced a spirited performance to earn their first win of the 2016 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup in Papua New Guinea Wednesday after coming from a goal down to beat Canada 3-1. Chinansa Uchendu converted a 45th minute penalty to cancel a Gabriel Kali goal for Canada before subsequent strikes by Joy Bokiri and Chiwendu Ihezuo as Spain defeated Japan 1-0 in Group B's other match. The Peter Dedewo team need to beat group leaders Spain Sunday and hope for a slip-up by Japan against Canada to qualify for the second round. The cities of Los Angeles in the United States, Paris in France and Budapest in Hungary are in the race to convince the International Olympic Committee with bids for the 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. The three cities presented their plans to over 1,000 delegates at the Association of National Olympic Committees General Assembly in Doha, Qatar, ahead of a special presentation session in July 2017 in Switzerland before the host city election in Peru come September next year.
I invite you to come to Budapest and observe yourself. There are no issues in Budapest, in Hungary, with extremism.
We have the full support of, I think, the American people behind us who have been in love with the Olympics forever, and vice versa, Olympics have always loved.
South Africa's record-breaking 2016 Rio Olympics 400 meters gold medalist Wade van Niekerk has been named as the male athlete of the Games after smashing a 17-year record held by Michael Johnson at the award ceremony by ANOC in Doha Tuesday. Puerto Rico's Monica Puig received a global award for her Olympic women's tennis gold. With sports updates, Ayodeji Makinde, NTA News.
We'll now take a quick check on Thursday's weather outlook for some Nigeria and world cities. That wraps it up on NTA International News. Thanks for watching. Omino Dennis my name.